Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the hour. California becomes the first U.S. state to sue President Trump over his recent global tariffs. Meanwhile, the White House says Kilmer Garcia, the man wrongfully deported to El Salvador, will never live in the U.S. again. Plus, at least 27 people killed in Gaza since this morning following Israeli attack. Let's get into The World Today. And thanks again for joining us. So we begin in the United States, where Governor Gavin Newsom of California has filed a lawsuit challenging President Donald Trump's spate of tariffs that have upended global trade. The suit, which marks the first time a state has sued over the levies, challenges an emergency power Trump cited, giving him authority to enact them. California is the world's fifth largest economy, outpacing every U.S. state and most countries, and is home to the largest shares of manufacturing and agricultural production in the U.S. The White House, which has argued the tariffs are tackling imbalances in international trade, dismissed the lawsuit and said it would continue addressing this national emergency that's decimating America's industries. Newsom and the state's Attorney General, Rob Bonta, announced the lawsuit at a news conference at an almond farm, one of the biggest crops California produces. Nearly 82% of the world's almonds come from the Golden State. It's also the nation's sole producer of artichokes, figs, olives, walnuts, and raisins. Newsom argued California has been disproportionately affected by the tariffs, and that's why the state, which has already filed 15 lawsuits against Trump since January, would lead the charge against the levies, which currently are 10% on most countries and 145% on China. The lawsuit cites multiple times from rulings by the Supreme Court against the Biden administration in its quest to forgive student debt, noting the High Court called Biden's maneuvers a transformative expansion of presidential authority. Newsom said if the Supreme Court is consistent, then this lawsuit is a lock for the state. Congressional research shows that the act has never been used to issue tariffs by any president. While California is the first state to file legal action against the Trump administration over the levies, several other lawsuits filed by small businesses and a civil rights group have similarly challenged Trump's authority on the matter. Let's come down to businesses and companies affected by the Trump tariffs. Technology company NVIDIA shares plunged on Wednesday after the company said it would be hit by $5.5 billion in costs due to the U.S. government tightening its export rules to China. The firm, which has been at the heart of the artificial intelligence boom, will require licenses to export its H2O AI chip to China, which has been one of its most popular. The rules come as part of an escalating trade war between the U.S. and China, with both countries introducing steep trade tariffs on each other, covering various goods. NVIDIA shares fell almost 7% on Wednesday. The Nasdaq exchange is listed on ended the day down 3.1%. The company announced on Tuesday the U.S. government had told it last week that the H2O chip required a permit to be sold to China, including Hong Kong. The tech giant says federal officials have advised them the license requirements will be in effect for the indefinite future. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping continues his tour of Southeast Asia in Cambodia today on the invitation of King Norodom Sihamoni. A signed article by President Xi titled "Together We Strive, Together We Thrive," towards a stable and sustainable China-Cambodia community with a shared future in the new era, was published in Cambodian media outlets ahead of his arrival. This visit comes as China positions itself as a more reliable trading partner to the ASEAN bloc than the United States, and amid ongoing tariff concerns, Cambodia was slapped with one of the highest global tariffs by the U.S., a rate of 49%, before duties were paused for 90 days. Such high tariffs were seen as a direct result of Cambodia's close partnership with China. China has accused Washington of economic bullying, stating it will fight until the end if Trump insists on provoking a tariff war. And back home in China, a video by the BBC shows many in Beijing insisting they will stand firm in the face of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods. Chinese officials this week acknowledged the potential for economic pain as a result of the unfolding trade war with the U.S. China has a massive population, and if they start buying more stuff, Chinese companies will not have to rely as much on trade overseas. A key target in this endeavor are retirees with potentially decades of savings. Now, the government wants them to spend some of it for the good of the country. Initiatives like the Silver Trains, which are tailored specifically to older travelers, aim to do just that. On board the Star Express, cocktails are poured and karaoke microphone is passed around as retirees party their way through China's southwestern Yunnan province. The initiative hopes to turn an economic problem into an economic solution by giving older people a fun avenue to spend more. Meanwhile, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance will be meeting the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on a 4-day visit to India next week as both countries negotiate a bilateral trade deal. The two leaders are scheduled to meet on April 21st, the first day of Vance's trip, for discussions on economic trade and geopolitical ties. India's foreign minister said in a statement the visit will provide an opportunity for both sides to review the progress in bilateral relations. Vance's first visit to India since taking office comes as the countries work to conclude a trade agreement by fall. And the volume of world merchandise trade is expected to decline by 0.2% in 2025 under current conditions. It's nearly 3 percentage points lower than what would have been expected under a low tariff baseline scenario, according to the WTO Secretariat's latest global trade outlook and statistics report released today. This is premised on the tariff situation as of April 14. Trade could shrink even further to negative 1.5% in 2025 if the situation deteriorates. Services trade, though not directly subject to tariffs, is also expected to be adversely affected, with the global volume of commercial services trade now forecast to grow by 4.0%, slower than expected.
LDCs are particularly vulnerable to current trade policy risks. Among the 10 economies facing the highest reciprocal tariffs, 5 are least developed countries. Some may see short-term gains by filling the gap left by Chinese exports to the U.S., but a reinstatement of reciprocal tariffs could carry severe consequences. Rather than raising barriers, this could be a moment to offer least developed countries some reprieve by exempting them from new tariffs and reinforcing their fragile integration into the global economy. Today's trade tensions remind us that we must also diversify demand. Over-concentration, whether it's in where we buy from or where we sell to, leads to over-dependence, making economies more vulnerable to shocks and fostering a sense of unfair burden sharing. That is why I'm reiterating my call for re-globalization, to deconcentrate trade by integrating more countries and regions that have long been on the margins.
Services trade, while not directly subject to tariffs, is also expected to be adversely affected. Declines in goods trade will reduce demand for related services such as transport and logistics, while broader economic uncertainty is expected to dampen demand for travel and investment-related services. As a result, the volume of global services trade, and I should stress it's the volume, not the value, is now forecast to grow by 4.0% in 2025 and 4.1% in 2026. In short, we are seeing a sharp turn in the global trade landscape. These developments highlight the importance of predictable and stable trade policies, not just for trade itself, but for broader economic resilience.
Joining us now is Dr. Oluwarotimi Owolabi. He is a lecturer at the Covenant University, a lecturer of economics, beg your pardon, at Covenant University. Thank you, Dr. Owolabi, for joining us on the program today.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
I'm sure that you heard the WTO Director General, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, saying that what the world needs right now will be reglobalization. What would that look like, to people who are not in tune with, economic terminologies and those who have no idea what that means?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, it means that globalization is when we are one together, one nation, one world, one people, and WTO's work is to promote that globalization, same like the IMF, same like the World Bank and all of that. So indeed, we need to evaluate this mantra of globalization to see how it can really work out, because there are lots of benefits to us being together as one, rather than this current what do I call it, trade war that I was talking about, which will serve to prevent especially the poor from the benefits of what you will get if we were globalized by one nation, if we were together as one. So it needs to be looked at. Yes, I agree, and I think this is one of the wake-up calls for that. So I agree with what Dr.
But that
Okonjo-Iweala
doesn't
said.
seem to be what the U.S. president wants. I mean, he's blaming U.S. trade deficits, on the fact that these tariffs are not equal between the U.S. and its trading partners. He believes that they're taking more advantage of the United States. So, do you think the U.S. will be part of this reglobalization based on Trump's views?
Yeah. So I think there's always more to being together, like I said. And yes, Trump has his views, and evidently is working on also his advisors. But like in anything, there's always those that are for and against every situation. So I think it's a call. I mean, we just need to we need to go beyond ourselves that's part of the globalization story. You go beyond yourself, look at the global economy, look at the world, look at what can we do to make the world better for everyone. So I believe, yes, I mean, Trump needs to also reevaluate his strategy and come up with something that allows everybody to be happy and we work together as one.
And we see the U.S. turning away from China and, making better partnerships, I think, with India as the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance heads to India next week. China on its own, President Xi making his Southeast Asia tour. He in Cambodia today talked about, reinventing those ties between them, cementing those ties. He's also been to Vietnam and can't remember the other countries that he's been to, but he's trying to shore up, for China. Do you think that the Chinese economy can survive without the inputs of the U.S. consumer on the other end?
Yes, I believe the Chinese economy can actually survive. I mean, they have the population, they have the numbers. They have the numbers, and yes, I mean, it's always been China, India kind of a thing for the global economy, but I think China have the numbers, like I said. They are putting together some strategies to achieve that they won't be adversely affected by the U.S. strategy. And yes, I think while U.S. is free to discuss with India and other people regarding the strategy, I think China will still have the upper hand on any day, because I mean they have the numbers. They've always been about trying to advance, and of course, you expect the countries that are developing to, even though we won't call China a developing country really, but they are advancing and they have a strategy. And I think at the end of the day, it's the person that has the better strategy that wins. And I think China actually has numbers, they have the labor, they have the skill, and really they are just looking at. I mean, for China, US is just one country out of so many that they can trade with, so many other things they can do. So I think it's about reevaluating your strategy also, so as a country, and not depending on one nation to be the one to drive your progress.
I don't know how much how active you are on social media, but I'm sure you've seen the TikTok videos of Chinese manufacturers trying to Yeah, reveal trade secrets, it seems. They are making products on the cheap and then asking U.S. consumers to bypass, the big brands and then come to them directly to buy products. We see luxury brands that are on display and they try to show us that, these luxury brands actually reach out to them to make these products. How much of an effect do you think that will have on the U.S. economy? Americans themselves were big on, these luxury brands in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell. Like I said, I mean, just started, so only time will tell. But certainly, if you are meeting and demand, are able to produce other goods linked to what you are selling to certain people that demand your goods, of course, your market will grow, and of course, you will meet your target. Because obviously, the target is that China are trying to show US that, you know what, we don't. You can do what you can. For instance, China cannot really control what US does, but they can do what is in their control, and that is to target the market that they want to target and sell the goods that consumers really want. And of course, I'm sure that they're looking beyond that, because as a businessman, you want to have a strategy that will keep on that in case US comes through in that channel, you have other means to move on. So they are strategizing, and that's what Chinese are known for, strategy. And I believe they're making good progress with what they are doing.
When you say they're making good progress, what exactly do you mean? Because you already said, the time will tell, what sort of impact it will have. And then you say that China is already making good progress. Help us understand the disparity here.
Yeah. So, okay, thank you very much. So I meant that China is a strategy, like I said, and like I said, it's already working a little bit because people are buying the goods. People are buying it. But of course, like I said, it's still early days. So of course, like I said, time will really tell the extent to which is successful on the long run. But on the immediate term, one can only forecast that they will get better, that the strategy will work, because if they continue on what they are doing, including being one step ahead of the game, in terms of determining the goods that the consumers want and providing goods that they may also want, because you keep on looking at goods that the market needs and targeting US customers. US customers are big on products, so of course you produce the goods that they want and are cheap. Of course, as a rational consumer, they will buy that which is cheap, and that's definitely it is in the best interest of China.
And I know we've talked before, with some other guests about what impact this will have on Africa. But looking a bit closely at what the WTO Director General also said, that she predicted a decline in the volume of world merchandise trade. How much of an impact will that be on Africa?
Well, it will be significant because Africa sells a lot to the US. But Africa has to, again, develop a strategy. We can sell among ourselves. I think the current US strategy is a kind of an opportunity for Africa to wake up and develop itself. I mean, we can work together as Africa and we can do much more within ourselves. So I think it's an opportunity for Africa to develop itself. And so while, yes, right now it will have an adverse effect on Africa, I think if Africa takes the bull by the horns and rethinks itself on how we can, because we have population again, we have the population numbers. We are Africans, and so we tend to know what those goods that appeal to ourselves. And so if we can come together as one, and we have the AFCFTA, African Free Trade Free Trade Agreement operational, we can take the opportunity that US has given us by this strategy to improve our trade and do much more than we've done in the past. And of course, improve our growth.
I hear you when you say that it's time for Africa to take the bull by the horns, but many African countries will tell you they are already engaged in trade. It might seem, on the surface that not a lot of work is going on with the AFCFTA, but underneath, they're making gradual progress. So what practical steps are you talking about here when you say that African countries need to take the bull by the horn?
We need to sit at a discussion table and see how this thing can work, because often Africa, we have a lot of talk and little action. So AFCFTA sounds good. It has a lot of benefits on paper, but the benefits we are yet to tangibly see. As the common man on the road is yet to tangibly see the benefits of the AFCFTA. But when there is potential, unfortunately, when there's potential, if you don't use it, it remains potential. It doesn't come to life. So Africans need to sit down at the table. We need to go beyond the politics and look at the economics. That it's a win-win for all of us in Africa together as one.
For Nigeria, what would you suggest?
For Nigeria, yeah, for Nigeria, we have to just promote our industries, promote our trade among ourselves. Government needs to provide the incentives for producers to produce and address things like inflation that often affects the demand, and see how to encourage ourselves and Nigerians to buy goods from ourselves, first of all, before we can even go to Africa. So again, it starts for they say charity begins at home. So again, the government has to look at things that discourage local demand within Nigeria, inflation, inflation, of course, and so many other things, inflation, infrastructure, the cost of business, all those things affect demand. So I think government in Nigeria, we need to start from home before we move to Africa, definitely. But yes, if we can do it from home, then definitely we can move to the next step to the African level and, have that discussion. Because again, Nigeria is a major country in Africa, but again, we don't see that in areas like trade, and we need to start to let that be seen during the action.
So all well and good, you place the blame at the feet of the government, and then you talk about individuals promoting homegrown industries. What is the responsibility of these factories, these manufacturing companies, these homegrown businesses? What is their role in this?
So their role is to be innovative, promote goods, create goods that customers want, create high quality goods that customers want, that customers can depend on. Again, nobody wants to buy a good today and within a few months online. It's not ideal. There should be standards. So why you cannot put the blame all at the businesses or all at the government? I think again, it's a one nation thing. The businesses need to have the interest of the consumers in mind. Government needs to have the interest of the citizens in mind, and let us know that together, whatever we are doing together, we want to make Nigeria better, especially talking about progress of the economy and sustainable development and all of that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oluwarotimi. Dr. Oluwarotimi Owolabi, thank you again, lecturer of economics at Covenant University.
Thank you for having me once again.
We're off on a short break now. The world today, still ahead. Colombia declares nationwide health emergency following yellow fever deaths. Stay with us. Welcome back. Bad weather did not stop some die-hard protesters who took to the streets of Haiti's capital on Wednesday to demand security against gangs. They burned tires, blocked roads, and put up signs. The protest was initially expected to draw thousands in Port-au-Prince, but the main event was cancelled due to heavy rain. Some police officers holding automatic firearms were positioned near the roadblocks, but did not intervene. 2 weeks ago, a protest in the same neighborhood gathered thousands, and the police had to use tear gas and smoke grenades to prevent protesters from marching all the way to the office of Ali Didier Fizami, whom the council appointed as prime minister in November. Discontent and anger are spreading as gangs that already control 85% of Port-au-Prince pillage once peaceful communities. Haiti's government announced on Monday it approved what it called a war budget of $275,000 aimed at alleviating the country's crisis as gang violence surges. Nearly 40% of the money will go towards Haiti's police and military to fight the armed groups that threaten national stability, while nearly 20% will go to fortify the border the country shares with the Dominican Republic, according to a statement by the Transitional Presidential Council. Another 16% will go to social programs, including those focused on education, health, and humanitarian assistance. Meanwhile, the head of the International Organization for Migration has warned escalating violence and funding shortfalls are crippling humanitarian efforts in Haiti, where over 1 million people are now displaced, triple the number from just a year ago. And gang control over vast areas of the capital has forced families to flee repeatedly, leaving many without access to shelter, clean water, or medical care. The crisis is compounded by deportations. Nearly 200,000 Haitians were returned from neighboring countries last year, placing additional strain on already overwhelmed services and infrastructure.
Just as the first matter, it is incredibly difficult to get to the people who are most in need. The capital city of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, is 85% occupied by gangs. It is impossible for people to go in and out of the capital city safely by road. Even for the humanitarian workers and the diplomats who work in the capital, they have to go into Cap Haitien and then take a helicopter. Helicopter doesn't always work regularly and is not able to travel predictably. So even getting humanitarian aid and access to the people in need is extremely difficult. But the situation has become much, much worse in recent months. There are now 1 million people who've been displaced. I had the chance to see some of the humanitarian sites, the sites for the displaced people in the capital, and you just see thousands of people who are stacked one on top of the other in very, very tight quarters. Like every other UN agency, we are navigating a complex situation, not just of access, but also financing. Of course, the United States government is and has been the major funder there. Many of our partners have lost funding altogether. So the NGO, international NGOs and local NGOs are simply unable to work at the same scale they had been working before. And of course, they were not able to meet all of the humanitarian needs that existed even before these most recent funding cuts.
Meanwhile, in Sudan's North Darfur, tens of thousands of people have fled a displacement camp following the massacre of civilians and aid workers as the country enters a third year of a conflict marked by horrific levels of sexual violence. UN humanitarians briefing journalists in Geneva speak of massive displacement after opposition forces and their affiliates reportedly launched coordinated assaults on Zamzam and Abu Shouk, two of the largest camps for internally displaced persons in Darfur.
That the GDP of Sudan has dropped.
They are all fleeing the Zamzam camp, and the other camps have been targeted, trying to go to Al Fashir because male have been the main target. As you are aware, Relief International lost 10 of their medical teams working there, which has led also to all actors to try to flee the scene. We are estimating that more than 80,000 has already fled the camp, and the numbers are really increasing every day.
Thousands of civilians are trapped in the Darfur region with very little access or no access at all to critical humanitarian life-saving services that they need, including access to water, access to food, and access to health care. We call, therefore, for an urgent humanitarian access and protection of humanitarian aid workers. We've seen a 288% increase in demand for life-saving support following rape and sexual violence. We've also seen what is beginning to look like systematic use of rape and sexual violence as a weapon of war. We have seen women's lives and women's bodies being turned into battlegrounds in this conflict.
We estimate that the GDP of Sudan has dropped by 40%. We are now facing a triple-digit inflation with the prices of the goods that have skyrocketed and have created difficulties for people to access essential goods, and including food. We have a severe disruption of infrastructure and services. In some areas of Sudan, less than a quarter of the health facilities are working, for example, and access to water remain very complicated. We are going to face a challenge, but it's also, I think, an opportunity in supporting the return of what we estimate it could be about 3 million people, maybe to the capital, and maybe even 4 million in other, 3 to 4 million considering other regions that the population now consider to be safe.
The White House says a man who officially of whom officials have acknowledged was wrongly deported to a prison in El Salvador, will never live in the U.S. again. Salvadoran national Kilmer Abrego Garcia was deported to Central America from Maryland after he was accused of being a member of the banned MS-13 gang, which his lawyer has denied. A judge has ordered President Donald Trump's administration to secure his return to the U.S., but El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele said earlier this week he did not have the power to do so. On Wednesday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt doubled down on accusations that Mr. Abrego Garcia is a gang member and accused the 29-year-old of domestic violence. She cited records showing his U.S. citizen wife once filed a protective order against him. It comes amid escalating showdown between the president and the judiciary on immigration, as a judge in another case said the administration could be held in contempt of court over deportation flights. However, U.S. Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen made good on his promise to visit El Salvador to demand the release of Kilmer Garcia. During a press conference after, Hollen claimed that he met with El Salvador's Vice President Felix Ulloa to request the release of Kilmer in accordance with a U.S. federal judge's order supported by the Supreme Court, which demands that he be freed and returned to the United States. 29-year-old Garcia was accused by the Trump administration of being part of the MS-13 gang, which has been labeled a terrorist organization by Washington. As a result, on March 15, he was expelled alongside 261 others who are alleged criminals, many of them Venezuelans, to the Terrorism Confinement Center in El Salvador. Holland noted that he asked the vice president to meet with Kilmer in the prison to check on his health, but the Salvadoran official said he did not have the authority to fulfill that request.
President Trump and the Trump administration, you would think that the U.S. courts have found that Mr. Abrego Garcia is part of MS-13, but in fact, they have not found that. In fact, recently a U.S. federal court judge said that the Trump administration did not have evidence to support the claim that he had ever been part of MS-13. So I want to emphasize that President Trump and our Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Vice President of the United States are lying when they say that Abrego Garcia has been charged with a crime or is part of MS-13. That is a lie. So they illegally abducted Mr. Abrego Garcia from Maryland and sent him to CECOP, which is a notorious prison here in El Salvador.
In the meantime, the U.S. government has threatened to ban Harvard University from enrolling foreign students after the institution said it would not bow to demands from President Trump's administration and was hit by a funding freeze. The White House has demanded the oldest university in the U.S. make changes to hiring, admissions, and teaching practices to help fight anti-Semitism on campus. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem had asked for records on what she called the illegal and violent activities of its foreign student visa holders. Harvard earlier said it had taken many steps to address anti-Semitism, and the demands were an effort to regulate the university's intellectual conditions. We're in the Middle East now, with medics in Gaza saying Israeli airstrikes have killed nearly 30 people since dawn today, with at least 21 airstrikes reported on Gaza City alone. The Israeli military issued a statement saying it attacked a terrorist who was in a Hamas compound and control compound to plan and execute acts against Israel. A hard-line member of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is reported to have joined the storming of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem by Israeli settlers that were reported on earlier. Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani said Israel had failed to respect a ceasefire agreement in Gaza as he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The Israeli military has claimed to have eliminated a number of Hamas members in the area around Han Yunis, whom it claims was the head of the group's weapons smuggling network. Colombia has declared a nationwide health emergency after at least 34 people died of yellow fever. According to official figures, yellow fever is caused by a virus transmitted to humans by infected mosquitoes. It can be prevented by a vaccine, which in most cases provides lifelong protection. The government has urged people to get vaccinated ahead of the Easter weekend, a time when many Colombians travel to warmer areas where the mosquitoes that spread the disease are prevalent. Health Minister Guillermo Alfonso Jaramillo said those going to high-risk areas would be required to show proof of vaccination. The health minister said there had been 74 confirmed cases of yellow fever in Colombia so far during the outbreak and urged people to get the vaccine, which in Colombia is free of charge. The number of cases reported is much higher than in recent years. Hundreds of thousands of people are in a beach on Kerala on Wednesday protesting the union government's Waqf Amendment Act 2025 held by the Indian Union Muslim League. The rally was described by organizers as the largest public gathering yet against the new law. The demonstration drew people from all over Kerala, with participants representing various organizations, including the Youth League, Muslim Students Federation, and the Vanita League. The Indian Parliament passed the Waqf Amendment Act 2025 earlier this month, which changes the governance of property worth billions of rupees donated by Muslims over past centuries. Protesters in Kozhikode expressed strong views on what they see as a broader pattern of targeting minorities. They say after Prime Minister Narendra Modi came to power in 2014, it was normal for him to hunt the minorities. Still ahead on The World Today. The Eiffel Tower illuminates with messages of peace in French, Arabic, Hebrew, and in English. Stay with us. The former Nigerian Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, has called on youth to reject agents of division and exclusion and focus on shared values in an era increasingly defined by identity politics. The former minister stated this while speaking at the Lagos Leadership Summit 2025 held in Lekki area of the state. The host governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, urged youths not to give up when faced with unfulfilled expectations, but remain determined to become transformative leaders in future.
Also here present with us is the head of service of Lagos State.
The Lagos Leadership Summit is one of the flagship events of the Lateef Jakonde Leadership Academy, which serves as a transformative platform that brings together young, visionary leaders to drive Nigeria's rebirth. The second edition of the summit, which was launched in 2024, had in attendance the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, former Governor Babatunde Fashola, State Executive Council members, and traditional leaders who took part in the leadership conversation.
Please keep it going till she gets to the podium. Thank you.
The Executive Secretary of the Lateef Jakonde Leadership Academy sets the tone for the discussions.
Hi, everyone. The Lagos Leadership Summit is not another gathering. It's a call, it's a movement. It's a reckoning of possibilities. We bridge generational gaps because the future cannot exist in isolation of the past.
Governor Sanwo-Olu engages the audience on how to create a legacy from your leadership by designing systems that work without you.
Leadership, it's all about ensuring that it's not about you, it's about a generation even that is coming behind you. Never be too scared about the deep end. You know, the deep end might actually just be a starting point for you to rediscover yourself. You know, I mean, once you are able to, be very courageous, be very discerning, and be very forthright, about what you believe, what your standards, what your principles are, please go for it.
This opens discussions further and leads the next speaker, former Lagos State Governor Babatunde Fashola, leaving the audience imagining what will happen when leadership leaves people behind.
We are having this conversation in this leadership forum at a time when identity politics is gaining global ascendancy. Whether you are old, whether you are young, I urge you, please turn your backs on these agents of division. Turn your backs on these agents of exclusion. Turn your back on the agents of hate, and turn your back on the agents of vitriol. Their disposition will not enrich our civilization. I am very clear about that. On the contrary, they are going to endanger our civilization, and young people have the greatest to lose if the human civilization is threatened.
Royal fathers also speak on the best ways to unite tradition and youths for nation building.
If you don't know your past, how do you, operate in the present time or even forecast, the future? So you'll be lost. You are neither here nor there.
To me, this is a call to action. Government has a major role to play. Religious bodies have a major role to play. Even we parents, do we even let our children know our culture and tradition? Do they know about their roots? Do they know about their heritage?
It's actually cool to come back to your roots and all what God and your parents have put in you that you've seen all over the world, you can bring it back home with your unique base and show your other peers that this is what gives us the advantage that we have in this world. We cannot try to, even when we're trying to build the Nigerian democracy, we cannot try to do it like the West. It is from home.
First person is inmate education.
And the moment everyone has been waiting for, Governor Sanwo-Olu announces the 5 lucky winners of the Award for Social Impact, who receive 5 million naira each for touching lives through various projects. The take-home message for the youth, according to the state government, is to stay focused and acquire skills that will help them drive sustainable impact in their various communities and beyond.
We go beyond our shores now to Hungary, where Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó reaffirmed his country's support for U.S. President Donald Trump's peace initiatives in Ukraine during a video message released Tuesday, following a phone call with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Szijjártó said Budapest is rallying behind efforts to usher in what he described as a new era of cooperation between Hungary and the United States. The foreign minister expressed concern that many politicians in Europe are trying to undermine the path to peace and welcomed Rubio's reassurance that the U.S. remains committed to diplomacy and peace building. After receiving Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Szijjártó also confirmed Hungary's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court, calling it a political organization that has worn itself out. Addressing the trade dispute between the United States, Szijjártó emphasized that negotiations remain the only way out of escalating trade tensions as the European Union prepares to vote on new retaliatory tariffs in Budapest. Later in the day, the EU adopted 25% retaliatory duties on U.S. imports, with Hungary as the sole member state voting against the measures.
Beszélésünkből egy jelentős részt vitt el az ukrajnai háborúval kapcsolatos.
And news just in, a high-stakes meeting is underway at the White House between U.S. President Donald Trump and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Meloni expressed confidence of the EU reaching a trade agreement with the U.S., stating, "I'm sure that we can make a deal." President Trump also declared there will be a trade deal 100%, hinting at U.S.-China agreement. Both leaders exchanged praise, with Trump calling Meloni a great prime minister and one of the real leaders of the world. We'll be tracking this story for you as it progresses. In the meantime, the video you saw earlier, activists gathering in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, as a tower illuminated with messages of peace in French, Arabic, Hebrew, and English. This happened Wednesday. The activists were seen holding placards reading "Justice, Freedom, and Ceasefire." Members of the French association Les Guerrières pour la Paix stood in solidarity with Israeli and Palestinian peace advocates. The monument will display the word peace in giant letters in 4 languages. One of the organizers, Hannah Assoulin, described the gathering as an urgent cry for peace, for justice, and for dignity for all. The Israel-Hamas war erupted following Hamas's October 7, 2023 attacks, which killed 1,139 people, mostly Israeli civilians, and resulted in over 200 captives held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Scientists have found new but tentative evidence that a faraway world orbiting another star may be home to life. A Cambridge team studying the atmosphere of a planet has detected signs of molecules which on Earth are only produced by simple organisms. As a second and more promising time, the chemicals associated with life have been detected in the planet's atmosphere by NASA's James Webb Space Telescope. But the team and independent astronomers stressed that more data is needed to confirm the results. The lead researcher said he hopes to obtain the clinching evidence sooner than later. And it'll be Good Friday this part of the world in just a few hours, but for hundreds of Christians in Seville, Spain, it's time to watch the El Cultivo Brotherhood's traditional Holy Week processions. According to one attendee, the Holy Week for a Sevillan is the most important thing there is. It's remembering your parents, your childhood, and your beginnings. Seville marks Wednesday as a special day, particularly as it commemorates the center of the Semana Santa celebrations known as the Day of the Crucified. That's it on the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Remember, as you celebrate this Easter, the reason for the season.